Hi, I'm Dan Curtis, and this is my 64 GTO Convertible, allegedly one of 11 with tri-power and 4-speed and factory air conditioning. And I have upgraded it to the tri-power because back in 64 you couldn't really get that in a convertible. So let's take a look at it as we walk around. So I got this in 2008, and it had the little skinny red line bicycle tires on it. And I thought it looked ridiculous with those little skinny tires, so I negotiated a deal to get the Kragers on it, and to me it's just what a 64 GTO is supposed to look like. And so some people like black walls, some people like the white letters, but on this white car I thought the white letters looked great. So I've been driving it like this for the past 15 years. I'm actually now closing in on closer to 20 than 15, and so it's a really fun car to drive, and probably out of all the cars I've had, and I've had a bunch, it's probably my favorite car to be buzzing around in. And I also get lots of people hanging out their car windows telling me they love it, asking me if I want to trade, and just people seem to love an old GTO. So it's a really fun car. It's been modified and upgraded for a little bit more performance than it came from the factory. And as I said, I added the tri-power many years ago and added a cam and shorty headers, and it's just a great and fun car to drive. Next up for this, because it's getting a little tired on the engine, is an engine rebuild. And we're going to probably put a TKX 5-speed in place of the 4-speed so that we can cruise on the freeway and not have it be revving up at 3,000 RPM. One of the things I like about this car and the way it's set up is that we were able to find the Stewart Warner green line gauges, which match the factory gauges. And so we added an oil pressure gauge and a temperature gauge, and that is a nice addition to it and very period correct. One final thing I'm going to add right on the top of the console is I have a factory vacuum gauge, which was their original fuel economy features, so that you could look at your vacuum and drive the car to optimize fuel economy based upon the vacuum. So in around 2016 or 17, we started to notice some things happening on it. Started to get some cracks in here, which is very common with these convertible cars because there's a lot of stress there. So we noticed that there was a bow here right in the center of the lid, the deck in front of the rear deck lid. So we ended up very carefully having to jack that up until it got to the point where it would stay. And then we fixed these cracks in here, that was part of what was happening, was it was collapsing. And then we noticed that the trunk floor was looking fatigued. So we just did a bunch of metal work on it, put in new floors, put in new trunk floor, fixed this sag, and then actually we were able to match the paint. So we didn't do a full repaint, but we did the rear deck lid, the panel here. We redid the sides because we did a little bit of body work on the bottom. And so now it's a nice 100% solid car with all GM factory metal in it, and just runs and drives great. It's a fun car to have.
Awesome. It's beautiful. And the top is what color?
The top is black to match the stripes on the side. And when I got it, those stripes were painted on, and then we redid the sides. One of the things that we had to do was realign the doors, and of course when you have painted stripes on the sides and you realign the doors, then the stripes don't line up. So we took the old painted stripes off, repainted the sides, and added these stripes, and the hood matches the color of the stripes. And you'll notice the plate on it, which is pretty amusing. People walk up to me and look at the plate and then ask me what year car it is, and I tell them read the plate, and they have difficulty deciphering that 6T4 GTO. So sometimes they'll say to me, so is it a 65? I'm like, no, read the plate.
Oh my gosh.
So it's a fun car. It was actually with a silver blue when it was first born. And before I got it, somebody painted it this white color, and I really like it because it's stunning with the dark blue interior and with the black top. It's just a great looking car going down the street. doesn't love a car guy with a Mickey Mouse hat, right?
Say hi, Dan.
Here we go. Let's take this thing for a ride. This thing turns like a tank.
Woo, all right. Beautiful morning at the top, down on the GTO.
This is about as good as the weather gets in Arizona when you're driving out, and it's in the mid to low 60s on a morning, and it's just a beautiful time out here. We'll take this thing for a ride and get it warmed up so I can tickle the tri-power, which makes music unlike anything else
There you go.
that I've ever owned. I've had cars with with double 4 barrels, but it doesn't sound like this thing. Only a GTO tri-power sounds like that. One of the things with this tri-power setup is it's only actually running a choke on the center carburetor. And so they can be a little cold-blooded, a little persnickety when they're cold, but once you learn how to drive them, they're fun. And you can tell by the idle that I cammed it up a little bit, and so it's got a nice little lumpy idle to it.
Feel that.
And it helps to make it sing a little bit of its music. I would imagine it'll be even more fun once I get a 5-speed in it, because now we're tacking at about 2,000 RPM, around 45 to 50. And when we're on the freeway with the 5-speed in it with a 0.8 overdrive, that'll drop that RPM down by probably 500, so 20 to 25%, so that'll be pretty nice. An interesting aspect of this thing is you've got this little tiny indicator in the middle of the dash that is your directional signal, and the yellow light in combination with the blue cover on that comes out purple. And so, but it's the same directional signal indicator for the left or the right directional, which is pretty amusing. And of course, on a 60-year-old car, it's not like the wiring harness makes everything really bright. So when the sun's on it, you can't tell if your directional's on or not anyway.
You know which way you're going.
I do. One of the things folks can do for old cars like this is they now have LED light bulbs, which take quite a bit less power to operate. So even though you're getting much lower voltage on this old wire that is corroded from the inside out, the LEDs are as bright as they were intended to be in the beginning. So that's actually a good combination to have in these cars. Isn't it a nice riding car?
It's
Not a lot of cowl shake because it's and I'll address that on the way back. All right, we've got it up to temperature, and we'll have a clear street ahead of us, so we'll give it a little juice going down the street here. So as you can see, it's got plenty of get up and go and makes wonderful music that is unique to that tri-power. We didn't really get all the way into it, but we got into it far enough to make it sing for us.
Sounded really good.
Yeah. And of course, it's a nice cool morning, so that's
It likes that.
it likes that. So one of the things you'll notice when we're driving along is that it's very smooth, unlike some of the older convertibles that were more unibody, and that's because this body of this car is on a frame. And so they put an extra heavy frame in these things when they had a convertible, so it's very stable. And you don't see any windshield shake. They call it cowl shake,
Yeah, not
that
at
you have
all.
on some other of the older convertibles.
Rattling or anything.
Nope.
Solid.
Quiet. So the interesting thing about this car is when I bought it in 2008, it was when the crash had just occurred during the savings and loan crisis. And the gentleman that had this car had a whole bunch of cars. He was a classic car dealer, and he had not sold a single car through the entire auction week here in Phoenix. And so I was visiting with him with some friends, showing some friends the cars. The friends had come in from out of town for auction week. And I kind of took a liking to this car, and we talked about it, but he wanted way more than I was willing to spend on it. So because it was in his classic car business. And so about 4 days later or 3 days later, he called me back and said, okay, what would it take to do this car? I need to send my son to flight school, and I didn't sell any cars, and I need to sell a car. So we negotiated a deal, and at the time it had a 4-barrel carburetor because these didn't come with a tri-power in 64 convertibles with the manual transmission for some reason. So I ended up negotiating a deal that included upgrading it with a new camshaft, with the tri-power, with this very 1 year only beautiful wooden wheel and the Kragers that are on the outside of it. And
Nice.
so that was the deal we struck, and I took possession of it in I think late February 2008. Now an interesting side story is I sold it once to a gentleman who had met his wife with a car like this, and it turns out she wasn't all that thrilled with the car, so I ended up buying it back from him.
It didn't have the meaning to her, I guess.
It did not have the meaning to her, so I ended up buying it back a year later.
Oh, that's good for you, though. Yeah. What a wonderful cruise. That was fun.
So when I first got this car, I tried to put this rear boot on, and as hard as I could try, there was no way I was going to get it on. And so the people that I bought it from were familiar with these cars, and as a result, they were able to get the boot on, and then I was able to inspect how they did it. But you have to tug and pull and snap and clasp and all kinds of things. But it actually goes on and off pretty easy. Once you get that, there's a couple of snaps right here, which I just unsnapped, and then there's got these little connectors here, and you just lift these up and pull this thing apart, and lo and behold, it just starts coming apart.
Oh, they're like plastic?
See them? Yeah. So, and then you got snaps in the corners and a piece of Velcro along there. So it's actually a pretty simple system. But when you don't know it, you don't really want to break things.
Right.
And so I ended up not running the boot for a month or so until I figured out how to do it. And of course, no car at a car show is any good without its sign.
That's
so
right.
here's the sign that indicates this car. With the way this boot works, someday I expect to be driving down the freeway and look in the back and see my boot go tumbling down across the
Let's hope not.
the freeway.
Figure safety, yeah.
So interestingly, this car has a power top. And back in those days, you didn't need to use the key. You just flip the switch and up she goes.
Nice.
And I learned a very somewhat costly lesson a while ago, is that number one, you got to pull the levers back out. You have to put these sun visors down, or the top will eat the sun visor on the way down. When we restored this, we had to rebuild this frame here because there were multiple parts of the frame that just weren't very happy with being 60 years old. So we had to do some welding and a bunch of other stuff, put some new cables in. But now, as you can see, when it was coming up, it comes up perfectly straight. unlike before where you had to have 3 people to do it because it just wasn't happy with all its bends. So then to get this top on, because it's a new top, you got to kind of run it up and then quickly clasp to get the clasp done. Otherwise you can't grab onto it like this side here. And then I've got to come around and do that one from the other side. Well, you get your exercise while you're doing it too. And there you go.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So when I did the stripes on the side, I matched the stripes to the top, and so when the top's up, it looks really nice,
Very nice.
with those dark stripes.
It's one of those cars that looks good either way.
It does look good either way. But it's not like a modern convertible with a liner. When this convertible top is up, even with the windows up, there is flapping and rattling and all kinds of stuff going on while the canvas, or the vinyl in this case, is moving around.
Yeah.
You can see fresh weather seals, so when we redid the convertible top, we also put all fresh weather seals on it. So because it's a GTO, all that stuff is still readily available.
Yeah, that makes it handy.
And when we go down to the Scottsdale Pavilions on auction week at 7 o'clock in the morning or 6:30 in the morning, and it's a whopping 45 degrees out, putting the top up actually is a pretty good thing.
Yeah. Beautiful. Anything you want to add?
So as we get older, we start to think about what would be fun to have before our time of being able to drive expires. And from time to time, I think about selling this and getting something else, but so far I haven't found anything that I like better. I have seen a 1941 Packard that I'm quite fond of, which I'll be going to take a ride in, and a Corvette, mid-60s Corvette Stingray convertible Roadster wouldn't be a bad car either. So someday we may have something different, but for the last, since 2008, I've had this car. So that's 17 years now. So that's a wonderful car to have.
Thank you, Dan.
And thank you for coming to shoot this car. It's a beautiful day in Arizona, and I hope folks enjoy the video.